Well, spring is finally here, and you know what that means. Time to take a look at the current anime season mucking about, to see what the Bleeding Edge has to offer. But before I could sink my teeth into this season, I had to pick shows to watch first. Which means I had to use my usual method. Of course, putting show names on lawyers' faces, and whichever ones made it out of their hunting trip with Dick Cheney intact were my winners. And this turned into quite the haul this time around. My condolences to the widows. Gintama is finally getting its long-awaited adaptation, but we'll see if it has the balls to stand up to One Piece. KyoAni steps up to the plate with their anime adaptation of Suzumiya Haruhi no Yuuutsu, what I'm sure is going to be a dull slice-of-life comedy. Black Lagoon comes out swinging with an action-packed crime thriller about a business trip gone horribly wrong. Some indie visual novel gets an adaptation called Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, something about kids fucking around in rural Japan. So I'm sure it's going to be pleasant. Nana is a romance story about two besties living in Tokyo. Production IG gives us Holic, a supernatural story about a deal with the devil. Utawarerumono is a drama fantasy about a guy with amnesia. Then we have Strawberry Panic, which is pure innocence. Nothing indecent happening at all. So ignore the shoujo eye tag. Witchblade reminds us why you don't fuck with the cub when the mama bear's around. Inukami is an ecchi comedy about Inu Mimis. So that's about as much as you really need to know. And lastly, Soul Link is about child soldiers in space. I've got a hell of a roster this season, so let's get down to it. Let's start with Gintama, Shonen Jump's latest darling to break onto the scene. Since aliens took over feudal Japan, specifically, and imposed a sword ban, samurai are feeling particularly useless. And that's where the protagonist, Gintoki, steps in to be this sort of main character type, and takes on odd jobs for cash. It has a really weird mix of futuristic technology with old Japanese-style architecture and culture, but it's a parody comedy franchise meant to be somewhat silly in the first place. If this series is lacking anything, it's animation, as the characters look stiff and lack movement. Almost like the budget was stretched a little thin, and given Sunrise's experience with long-running anime, that shouldn't be a problem they'd have. Anyway, it's sort of funny, and I'm sure fans will like it, but I doubt it'll gain much of a following, even if it did kick off this season with a double feature episode. Check it out if you like comedy shonen anime, I guess. Next, let's look up the anime adaptation of a novel series that's been getting some buzz lately, Suzumiya Haruhi no Yuuutsu, or The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. So, we have a guy who starts high school and expects to live a pretty uneventful life. Unlucky for him, he's, in an anime. That is until he sat next to the crazy girl that has rumors swirling around her about how crazy she is, named Haruhi. She believes in aliens, psychic power, and time travel, and ropes the guy into looking for these things along with a moe blob, a good-looking dude, and a kudere who reads. Definitely a fresh cast to hold my attention, as we don't see these types play off one another that often. Animation-wise, it's pretty good. KyoAni's come a long way with their animation and character designs, so this looks pretty damn good. But still, nothing's more weird than sitting down to watch an anime and it being in that stupid gimmicky 16:9 format. Do they expect us to all have movie projectors in our houses or what? The first episode's kinda dull and I'm not seeing too much of an appeal with this slice of life pitch, so probably won't be any good. Give it a pass. Let's look at Black Lagoon, one of Madhouse's offerings this season, as they try to follow up on the success of their recent Hellsing OVAs. So a businessman gets kidnapped by a criminal organization, and when his company refuses to pay the ransom, he joins the group to make ends meet. It's a pretty basic plot, but honestly I don't think it really needs much more than that. The whole criminal underworld element in high action appeals to my basic instincts, because sometimes you just want an adrenaline-fueled action show to sink your teeth into, and Madhouse did a great job selling that in this first episode, blowing expectations out of the water with a crisply animated and nicely composed series. I'm taking this first episode, and looking forward to what'll come next, even if the cast is kinda cookie cutter. Next up, we have an anime that's confusing as hell already, Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, or When the Cicadas Cry. We have a flash forward to how the series will end within the first few seconds. And that's not major spoilers or anything, thanks show for doing that in the first few seconds. But damn was it bloody. Can't wait to see the complex character development that leads this group of close friends down that avenue. But this series has a mystery dam plot that greatly impacted the town in the past, and we'll see how that influences the characters' lives, which will be super interesting. Definitely looking forward to how this 24-episode series will end, especially if it's already throwing up this type of mystery in the first episode. Animation-wise, it's pretty decent, relying on cute models to look sorta creepy, but that might be worth the watch, unless you really can't stand the bit of blood in the first few seconds. How about we look at a romance series with two girls named after the series they're in? Nana. So since it's a romance series with two girls, let's nip this in the bud and get the record straight. It's not a romance series between them, but as they start their new lives in the big city. One being a girl following her boyfriend to Tokyo since he got into the college he wanted, and the other deciding to move there to take her vocalist career more seriously, after leaving her abandoned boyfriend behind. That seems pretty basic, but this is the type of series that sells itself on personal connections. So seeing young people make mistakes and continuing living with them is a good place to start. I'm digging the grounded plot and characters, but the animation on the other hand is super weird. Parts are certainly ambitious with the snow and backgrounds, but the models themselves are a pretty strange mix between lanky and odd head proportions. This feels incredibly stylized from the artist, which could be distracting, but in some shots, I don't feel the character art is up to snuff with the background quality, making them feel pasted in. Either way, it's an enjoyable story, and enough reason to check it out. Time to sink our teeth into Production IG's adaptation of Holic, a series about a guy who can see spirits and other weird shit, but absolutely hates it. So when he enters a weird building, he meets a woman who says she can get rid of that for him, but for a price. Of course, he now works for her at a wish-granting store where he pays off his debt, but that doesn't mean his life has gotten any less strange. Animation-wise, it's pretty solid with a nice style to help it stand out in the crowd, with sleek character designs and trippy visuals to sell the psychedelic vibe the series is going for, as well as some decent visual timing to make its humor pop more. A nice quirky sort of series I can sink my teeth into, so definitely worth checking out due to how strange it is, especially for fans of Tsubasa Chronicle. Let's look at one of this season's fetish fuel, Utawarerumono, a series about a guy waking up with amnesia in a village full of demi-humans with animal ears and tails, but something's not quite right with this mysterious stranger as he's wearing a mask he can't take off, and is extremely charismatic and smart. Based on a tactical role-playing game, it's easy to see that this will end up being a harem empire-building fantasy series, and it's pretty dull if I'm being honest. I'm not feeling it, and the animation is a bit stiff for my taste, especially coming off of something like Black Lagoon and Haruhi already. An easy pass, especially since there's already Animal Ear Girl anime out this season. Let's get on to one of the main dishes, so to speak. Otakus love them some girls kissing, so when Strawberry Panic got an adaptation, it was a no-brainer to check out. So this anime follows this girl, Nagisa, as she starts her new school life in an amazing private school. She meets her roommate who's a little clingy, and a bunch of other girls who are also incredibly affectionate, laying it on a bit thick already. That is, until she meets the queen senpai of the entire school who grabs her by the waist and pulls her in for a smooch just completely out of nowhere. Yeah, it's that sort of show. Based on a short story series, there's a lot of characters in play, and that's a lot to manage, especially when you're juggling this many waifus. But as long as it delivers on its drama and girls kissing, it'll please audiences. Though I'm not sure about the animation, as it's a tad flat, and the character designs would put Barbie to shame. Recommended for Yuri fans though, so check it out if you're really into that. Feeling a bit frisky but want to pretend it's not just horny posting on MySpace? Witchblade is here to give you the facade of a story to cover your ass when you tell your mom it's all about the plot. Following a mother as she's on the run from Child Protective Services trying to take her daughter away, when she's attacked by a super weapon and transforms into a super badass murder machine that's scantily dressed. Also adds some validity to CPS's concerns. But who am I to judge? Anyway, this is one of those super edgy animes with a lot of death and tits. So, certainly appealing to its target demographic of teenage boys. The art for this is decently done though, with some nice camera work and pretty well handled cuts to emphasize the impacts. Studio Gonzo did a nice job on the adaptation, and I look forward to seeing what happens next. But it's a shame it relies on those edgy elements to sell itself. Mild recommendation. The ecchi train doesn't stop there. Up next is Inukami, a series about a guy with a super badass enslaved dog girl who kicks demon ass for her master when he wants her to, or when he looks at another woman. This is essentially an episodic comedy series following the horny main dude getting his ass kicked around by his dog girl for meager profit while we occasionally get panty shots. But mostly he's the one who ends up naked too, so hooray equality. If the slapstick isn't enough to hold your attention, I'm sure the sex jokes and nudity will. But the animation isn't that great, and it's pretty plain compared to many of the other offerings this season, so it's a bit lackluster. Only watch if you're desperate for comedy, or worryingly into dogs. And lastly, let's take a look at one show I'm sure will blow us all away. What do you get when you mash space life sci-fi, military, and terrorists with high school kids? If you thought a romance drama about a brother complex, you'd be right. Picture Magic's adaptation of the H visual novel Soul Link hits our television screens. I don't really know what to say about this one, as it's lacking a lot of impact in the first episode, besides setup for the entire series and getting us familiar with the main characters. That's about it. That puts reviewing the first episode in a hard spot, since nothing's really happened, and, well, this is a season preview, so it's not like I can look ahead or anything. And as for the animation, while the characters look decently unique among the cast, the actual animation itself isn't much to write home about, as it's stiff as hell with standard shot composition, so that means that it's pretty bland in its presentation. Nothing really dynamic or interesting happening. A pretty big disappointment, and one that's easy to pass over without missing a beat. So that's it. Spring 2006 is upon us, and I have to say, this entire season is lacking pretty hard. Nothing's really standing out to me besides... Okay, did you make it this far? I'm pretty sure you're wondering how straight-faced I was gonna play this. And sure shit, I did wait until the conclusion. For those who are watching this in the future and didn't see it on its release day, why don't you look down and see what day this was posted on? Anyway, that's it. You made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and yeah, we're not 5-starring this. You can also check out my Discord, not my AIM, down in the description. And if you really want to support me, no, that's not a PayPal link, that's actually my Patreon. That's where you can pick up some extra perks, like voting on what I do next. Speaking of, thanks to Nadeshko for their continued support on Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching.